was making a motion to approve the consent agenda minus certain items. So far, we have listed 40817.
I'd like to include 40823 and 40855.
Can you take over?
How much are those? I don't have them in front
I
of me.
don't know what you're talking
One
about.
is $1,050, and the last one is $20,894.52.
Except for that. Okay, no.
And I have a question on, any answer from the auditor yet on this administrative leave situation?
No, they're anticipating that they're going to be done with the audit on the 30th, and that's what they're asking for, responses from the city attorney and from staff, so that they can close out their audit on the 30th. That's what they're working for.
Oh, Walker?
What were the check numbers again? I heard 40823. What was the other? 40855. I don't see a 55.
That's the one that was added.
The one in your,
Oh, this one?
see the contractor said for the last few months.
Okay. I second Josh's motion. Is there anything else? Do we have a second already?
Okay,
So the motion
motion to pass without that.
is Josh, and the second is Trent.
Okay. It has been moved, the second motion. Josh, have you anything to say about?
Nope, I think the rest of the items are pretty non-controversial.
Right. So, we're gonna take a vote now for everything except item, what's that, 4817, 4823, 4855. Any comment from the audience, if you understand what went on? No comment. Roll call, council.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon?
Aye.
Councilmember Putnam?
Aye.
Councilmember Steiger?
Aye.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Councilmember Guyer? Aye. Councilmember Halsey?
Aye.
Motion carries.
If there's no other,
You want to wait?
okay, she'll handle that, Betty.
What?
I'll give you the numbers and then you can add that for the next,
They can go tonight, we just have to discuss them individually.
So is somebody gonna make a motion on your?
Make a anybody make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
No.
What do you got to say?
We need to discuss the 3 items pulled from the consent agenda. And
This,
Yeah.
okay, let's discuss. Betty, you better take over.
I don't even know what the, for the sake of argument, I'll move for discussion purposes, to move to approve check number 40817.
Wait, why don't we just have Betty work on it and bring it in for the next, meeting?
Sorry, that was 40817.
Yeah.
Because these legitimate bills that need to be paid. Second.
Go ahead.
Do you have
They have it right there. I don't
questions
have
for me?
agenda in front of me.
Can you explain the check maybe? And I think the motion is specific to check number 40817. Can you explain what that is?
This is a billing for inspection services, 8 hours at $35 per hour.
For?
For Howard Erickson, and it was submitted and signed by Mayor Tyson. And there is a copy of the inspection backup submitted.
Concerns I have, in relationship to making this payment is, one, Mr. Erickson was never hired or contracted by the city to perform those functions, and it was brought into question his,
Qualifications.
state licensing authorization, whatever you want to call it, to even perform those functions. I do not see how we as a council can approve a check for services rendered when there wasn't even a contract, there wasn't even a written statement provided by the mayor that he hired Mr. Erickson, ever presented to this council to support Mr. Erickson's performance in this activity.
Between he and I, it was an emergency, go ahead. Howard,
No.
take the stand.
This is council business. This is council's business.
Okay.
So we're not done discussing. If the council wants to.
You're not prepared?
I'm gonna vote against it,
Okay,
yes.
let's take a vote right now.
No, we're gonna discuss it. You will not dictate what we're gonna
Okay,
do.
let's discuss it. Any other council members discuss?
Leanne was the second.
Out.
Leanne.
So, and I seconded just before the discussion, we already have somebody for inspections under contract right now. So I'm gonna vote against this motion. For this.
I think Gary's first on that.
I will be voting no on this. Howard Erickson is not a certified building inspector. He doesn't have a city business license or building inspector. And, that would be analogous to paying a Boy Scout that was trained in first aid to do surgery.
I'd like to ask the opinion of the attorney. On what would you like to know? Are we obligated to pay this? No.
Was that a straight answer from an attorney?
Just
Were
to
you
call out
okay?
the attorneys have their hands on their own placards.
Any other comments?
I've got a comment.
No.
While I recognize that there is no contract in place for this, we did retroactively pay the other contract building official after a contract was in place. And as a fundamental matter, the work was performed for the city, whether it should have been or not, it was. And I'm reluctant to leave it out there as a potential claim against the city when we could make it go away for $280.
John?
Problem with that statement is what you're doing is authorizing the performance of his work by making payment. The previous contract you referred to is there was a contract signed by the mayor for sound inspection, even though it was not authorized by this council. No document from the mayor in hiring Howard Erickson to perform this service. As such, he put what Howard Erickson did in liability to the city, and if we authorize the payment of it, we concur with that liability. And again, I've never seen a document from the mayor hiring Howard to perform this service.
Okay. What I did is give him a verbal agreement contract. At that time, it wasn't an emergency. I was new as a mayor. I did things the way I do ordinarily. Get things done. Get the work done, get the emergency done. As far as the going to the council was concerned, it would have took another 2 weeks before I get, or a week before I get to the council. It was an emergency, it had to be done then and there, so I acted. I gave him a verbal contract to go ahead and get the jobs done. I take full responsibility for the city, and that puts the city right on the line.
Can I make a comment, or
Not yet.
is somebody afraid of the comment?
No, we'll get to that part.
Okay.
First off, there's no verbal contract in government. You need, and there's no emergency situation. We already discussed.
It was an emergency, and there was a verbal contract.
I didn't say there wasn't a verbal contract. I said you cannot make a verbal contract.
Well, nobody told me I cannot at that time. Where were you?
I've been here every meeting.
Yeah, but where were you when the
Point of order,
emergency?
now. You can't do that. I know you're fired up, but you can't do that.
I know I can't do that, but I won't take that.
Maybe I could explain some stuff that might shed some light on this problem. But if you don't wanna listen to anybody, but that's nothing unusual.
Let's take a vote. Are we gonna pay it or aren't we? Let's get it over with.
No. We still gotta go through this thing. So, we're here,
Okay.
so we gotta find more council debate, and
Okay.
then once we get that, then we'll do audience comments.
Any other comments from the council? It's your chance now. Comment from the audience.
Yeah, I have a comment. I was asked to do some inspections, and the fact that Roger Smith is not available, he's on medical leave. A guy by the name of Kelly, I don't know his last name, he was brought in here, he did do a number of inspections. He went out sick, so there was no building inspector. Now, I know the council thinks the building inspection is just collect the money and inspect the house, but there is a timely manner involved in this. In other words, on some things, it's very few hours. If you don't get there to inspect it, they can just move on. You can't hold them up forever on inspection, so somebody had to do it. I've done this before when I worked for the city one time, some years ago in South Public Works. I did inspection. As far as the state license to do building inspections, I don't believe it exists. What you're talking about is an association of building inspectors.
Right.
ICBO, I think it's called. And there's one other
ICC.
one. It's association, it's not a state
International.
permit. Now, my question to you is, if those houses hadn't been inspected, and it would have taken a few days, and they would have been completed. So some of those were final inspections. I think if you look at the document, it says final inspections. What I did it in cahoots with the superintendent and the constructionist. We walked those houses together. Now, would you like people to come down here and say, I just spent $200,000 for a house, and they spent $10,000 for a building permit, and here I'm sitting in a house that hasn't been inspected, period. Now, I think you gotta think about this timely manner a little bit more than what everybody's thinking about. I know you guys around here, there isn't one of you that like me. I don't really give a damn about that. That's not my problem. I don't care if you like me or not. That isn't the situation. This is a business deal between the mayor, me, a construction company, and the people that bought the house. That's what it is. Now, all I'm asking, if you look at the amount I charge compared for what I did, I think it's more than fair. Nobody went back on any of those inspections from the city at a later date and said these inspections are poor, the house isn't framed properly, the gas, which was the big deal about how I checked the pressure on a gas service, which was very preliminary because they had a few mechanics go in there and the gauge was still on there with the pressure in it when he probably got there to put the furnace in. All I did was try and move this thing along. I don't want to be building inspector, but so I knew I had a little experience at it, and I was willing to do it and get it done. As soon as I got it done, and somebody already tell about the gas inspection, I don't want to work for anybody that don't appreciate me. I don't need a job. I'm a very capable person. I've had jobs all my life. I've walked out of jobs to play baseball game, and the next day I had another job. But if you don't want to pay me, there's other avenues to take. Now, if the city wants to go into those avenues, you're going to beat me up for $280, but I'll guarantee you what, you can't defend your case against me for $280. Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? Go ahead.
Jean Fancher, 27248 55th Avenue South. As a journeyman carpenter, I know a little bit about construction. Mr. Erickson,
What?
how far is the joint for the seismic bolts and the foundation?
Point of order, this isn't a chance for you to talk about something.
But what I'm saying is, there is an international certification service that inspectors are part of every city's job description. They need to be a certified inspector and pass the test to be accredited to do inspections. Paying somebody who is not accredited does set you up for a liability. There are a lot of things to building a house or inspecting the gas line. And if one is not certified as this sound inspection in framing, firewall, insulation, plumbing, except for electrical, that's L&I, gas, then that puts the city at risk. It puts the homeowner at risk because they'd like to know that their inspector was certified. I don't care if it takes extra 3 weeks. I got a friend on the hill who's taken 8 years for his garage to get signed off, mostly because sickness and he's slow. But that's the point of inspection, part of the health and safety. If Mayor Sun initiated verbal contract with Mr. Erickson without council approval, then maybe Mayor Sun should pay the $240 out of his pocket rather than have the city pay a bill for an unauthorized service.
Are you
Somebody
asking
comes
me?
and cuts,
Are you telling me?
I'm suggesting.
What she said?
Make a
So,
comment.
if somebody cuts my lawn without my approval, I'm not gonna pay him. Same deal. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I look at it this way, the council at the time was in favor of what was done, or had been done, and I don't think anybody ever went back and did any re-inspection on those that were signed off on. So, whatever the errors were and everything else, if you're willing to sit around here and pay Bob Boyd $2,600 every 2 weeks because he's on sick leave, but he gets administrative pay, then we shouldn't be squabbling over $280.
I have a follow-up question for the attorney on the issue of liability for the inspection. As a practical matter, do we assume any additional liability by paying for this work if the greater liability is we've already signed off on the occupancy of these houses? These houses are occupied, the permit was finalized. Do we in fact accept any greater liability by paying for the inspection that led to that final action on the permit?
Possibly, yes. There's ratification that they may try and bring against the city for unauthorized act on behalf of the city employees. There's two questions. Legally, do we have to pay them, and morally or ethically, should we pay them? The answer to one is no, and the answer to the other is up to the council.
Well, my question is actually the third. Is it worth the money to not just pay them as a practical matter?
Is it going to make any difference in the long run as a practical matter? No.
Any other comments from the? Okay, we come to a decision now. I'm gonna call roll call of council.
Councilmember Putnam,
Aye.
Councilmember Steiger,
What are we voting on?
to approve check
You're gonna
number.
pay the check.
For one check?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Walker,
No.
Councilmember Guyer,
No.
Councilmember Holsey,
No.
Councilmember Jones,
No.
Councilmember McMahon,
No.
motion failed.
The motion is not passed.
You have that other piece of paper, there were two other
I
checks.
can't.
There were two other checks, you still have that other piece of paper?
Well, you better handle that. I don't know.
Check number 40823 for $1,050 is for an attorney that works for the municipal court.
Move to approve check number 40823.
Second.
Halsey?
I
Is
just
there any
wanted
comments?
some clarification on to what the check is for.
Josh,
And
is
is
there
it the
any comments?
indigent defense attorney report? Is that correct?
I'm not sure if it's the indigent or the prosecutor, but it's one of the two. Indigent, okay.
So we are obligated to provide indigent defense services. That's a legitimate expense. Have an existing contract with them.
Any other comments from the council?
From the audience.
I mean, the audience, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Additional council debate?
So the motion is by Councilmember Holsey, seconded by Councilmember Putnam, to approve check number 40823 in the amount of $1,050.
Roll call of council?
Councilmember Guyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Holsey,
Aye.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Councilmember Putnam,
Aye.
Councilmember Steiger,
All right.
Councilmember Walker,
Aye.
motion carries.
Motion has been passed.
And I would move to approve payments of voucher 40855 in the amount of $20,894.52.
This voucher is to pay Department of Retirement Services in 2006, I believe. Sorry.
Done, go on.
2006, council entered into a contract with Pam Nelson for financial services. As the finance director, in the contract indicated that the hourly rate was $40 an hour and there would not be any benefits. Further into her tenure with the City of Pacific, council amended the contract and added medical benefits, and she became covered by medical benefits. They did not ever add retirement benefits. Ms. Nelson found a job with a new city and found out that if you have a contract with the Department of Retirement Services, you must pay retirement services for all eligible positions, regardless of who is holding those positions. So they sent a questionnaire to the city. We had to fill it out for her entire tenure with the city. It was an eligible position. Yep, sorry. It was an eligible position, and so the city is liable to pay because the city has a contract with the Department of Retirement Services that requires the city to pay retirement benefits for all eligible positions. the questionnaire, when we got it all filled out, all the information, we took it over to Attorney Luce's office and, had his staff, he and his staff went through it. We looked for a way that we could go back against Ms. Nelson, seeing how the contract was that she wouldn't have retirement, and they did not feel that there was any way that the city could go back. We filed the paperwork back with the retirement, and they sent us a bill. They told me originally when they sent the bill that we would only have to pay the city's portion, and then today they changed their mind and said we'll have to pay the entire thing. The check is only for the city's portion. There's another $14,000 that is the employee's portion, and it's up to us to try and collect that from Ms. Nelson, which we will try to do. If we don't collect it, whether we collect it or not, it will be the city's responsibility, but the check that was processed for tonight was only for the city's portion.
Is there any questions from the council?
Motion dies for lack of second.
I second it.
Good job.
Unfortunately, this is one of those things that you can't get out of through a contract. There are certain obligations that we have regardless of how we fill a position, there are certain obligations that go with that position. And I believe the finance director and the attorney have made every reasonable effort to find a way out of having to pay for this or to have them go after Pam Nelson for it, but it's our obligation.
So this has gone to finance committee, we've had the discussions and found out, the nice little surprise tonight, the additional $14,000 that we'll end up having to pay, but it has been discussed and we have no way around it.
The only question I have, though I don't like any of this, is relationship to the employee contribution requirement. The state is trying to force the city to owe that, based on, do they give us a justification for that basis?
This is the first I've heard of it, and I need council authorization, I think, to get sued against her if we decide to go that way.
I am familiar with other cases where if the employer was supposed to withhold money from the employee's paycheck and the employer failed to do so, the employer is still responsible for remitting it, and then we have to go back to her and say, oops, we overpaid you by failing to withhold this, but it was our obligation to withhold it, so we have to pay it whether we withheld it or not. That's why they make employers do the withholding, is so they've got someone with deep pockets to go after if they don't get their money.
Do we need to authorize you tonight?
Not necessarily tonight, but
Debate by the council? Comments from the audience? Okay. Simon?
What happens if we don't pay it?
What do you think?
He asked a question of staff.
It will be in default of the contract you have with the Department of Retirement.
Okay, so what does that mean? Just like
Any
everything
other
else,
comment?
just like everything else, they do nothing?
They'll charge interest
And attorney fees.
and attorney fees to collect it from us.
Okay, but every government agency in the world we've been trying to have do something for us, they do nothing. And does that mean there's just gonna be, it's a scare tactic, and if we get it easy, they have to work for it, they forget it? I mean, that's I think we're caving in.
None of the agencies we went to for help would get any money out of helping us.
Okay, where do we at now?
Now we're back to comments from the audience.
Comments from the audience? Any additional debate from the council? Just take the motion, I can't.
The motion is by Councilmember Putnam, seconded by Councilmember Guyer, to approve payment of check number 40855.
Roll call, Council.
Councilmember Holsey?
No.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember McMahon?
No.
Councilmember Putnam?
Aye.
Councilmember Spiker?
No.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Councilmember Guyer?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The motion is
So it
not
does,
approved.
it carries. It carries, 4-3.
4-3? The motion has been passed. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and second that the meeting is adjourned.